Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. I'm talking to one of my friends that's having a live conversation with two Bigfoot in their yard. And these are both ones that can speak passable English. And then physically speak English.
What?
And yeah, well, if they're hanging around with humans long enough, they learn your language. And if they can talk to you, they can ask you what other words mean, and then they get better at it. And like I said, this one has been hanging around with the same family for 3 generations. His English is really good. Well, they're hanging around in this one person's yard like practically every night they're out there. There's 2-3 of them at least. And this one particular night they're out in the backyard, and there's this other not Bigfoot there.
The history of our Earth is so different from what we can imagine.
Enjoy the journey.
The Smithsonian, if they found out about a large skeleton somewhere, was to go get it.
I'm going to assume at least one person is right, because if one person's right, it busts the paradigm. It all goes back to the fallen cherub. And the problem with the modern day church, they have a very truncated view of the supernatural.
This backdrop that's just pregnant with all kinds of meaning associated with this Mount Hermon event.
Welcome to Blurry Creatures.
And this guy defects from the kingdom. That's a big deal.
Duke Sullivan, welcome back to Blurry Creatures. You took a chance on us in the beginning. You were the first guest on the show, and here we are, episode 200. We've been pumping out 1 to 2 episodes a week for the last 3 years. We've learned a thing or two. Duke, you have your own show, World Bigfoot Radio, and you guys can follow at World Bigfoot Radio 3933 on YouTube. Go check out Duke's work. Duke, you were like, we often talked over the years. We still reference your episode from time to time.
Oh, good God, was it that bad? I'm sorry.
No, it was great.
Well, it blew our minds, for at least mine. I was so new to the Bigfoot space, not in the sense of really maybe just discussing and talking about it and kind of parsing things out. Like, you'd always been interested in the topic, and then when you started talking about your own experience, and especially the one thing I do remember, Duke, is you talking about Bigfoot's rolling around in gravel and making armor. And I don't know why that stuck with me, but it stuck with me, and I just
and Henry Hudson getting drunk and
bowling with the dwarves,
with the little people when he was exploring Hudson Valley. Yeah, that's a really weird story too. And it's like, well, but it's in a historical record. What are you gonna do?
No, but it was awesome, and we had a good time with you from that first, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And since then, we've interviewed a lot of people in this space, and we've gone down just about every rabbit hole from every creature out there that you can imagine. But a lot of the stuff lately has been UFOs and aliens, because that stuff's kind of hitting the mainstream now. Welcome back to the show. Maybe give us an update on kind of what's been going on the last couple of years for our listeners who've been on the ride from the beginning of our podcast. What have you been up to, Duke? Tell us. We want to know.
To be back, I've been doing my weekly turn out a show every Sunday thing. And sometimes it's my own field research, in which case it's on my World Bigfoot TV playlist. Or if I do an interview with a guest or something, it's a Duke Chat playlist. Or if it's somewhere in between, it's World Bigfoot Radio. But I don't do any straight up radio shows anymore. I did have a radio show on TFR Live for a while. But I tend to veer toward wanting to actually show the evidence which is what so many of these other shows are slacking off on. Even the ones that are actually visual format, usually they'll just sit there and interview somebody. Well, it's like, where's your evidence? You know, my favorite example of that is Blaine Tyler, who loves to call out people for doing that kind of stuff. And he ran into a very famous Bigfoot researcher at the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference when I was there last spring. And I had gotten him lined up to be there. Flew him down from Canada, his first time in the U.S., also first time on a plane. And
Wow.
The guy he had a conversation with here is in his late 70s, early 80s, and he's from Montana. And he was hanging around with the old guys back in the olden days, and he still knows all of them. Done a lot of, boots on the ground, running around, Bigfoot this, Bigfoot that. He was telling Blaine all these stories, and, stories are all fine and good, but where's your pictures? So at some point, Blaine said, well, you got any pictures of this stuff with you? And he went, oh, no, I didn't bring any of that with me. And Blaine goes, oh, you want to see some Bigfoot pictures? And whips out his cell phone. Shows him 30. Right out, easily. And then he didn't want to talk to Blaine anymore.
Yeah. It's such a huge space now. I think the Bigfoot community's kind of grown a lot, and obviously our show's kind of gone to so many different avenues. And what we do is kind of more interviews, trying to bring on the experts who do what you do, who go out and dig, basically mine for Bigfoot treasure. You're the guys, the ones that find it first. Have you had any crazy encounters lately? Anything that's...
Oh, yeah,
really...
I've had all kinds of stuff, and some of it I can't even talk about.
That's the stuff we want to talk about, Duke.
You went through a portal.
Actually, I got a cool little widget on my hat right here. That's a Indian arrowhead. It's a bird point. You don't see those very often. They make the little bitty ones for shooting birds with. Oh. Then this was found in the woods down in Louisiana and given to a friend of mine to give to me. Now, he who found it was a Bigfoot, which is why I have it on my hat.
Wait, what?
Oh, really?
How does that work?
Bigfoot's giving you arrowheads, huh?
Yeah, he was digging. He can find them all the time, so he gave this friend of mine a couple of them. And I said, well, tell him to grab me one, too, the next time he's out there. And about a couple of weeks later, she said he left two for you. There's a regular-looking one, which I have on the back of the hat, and then there's this bird point one that I put on the front of the hat. So I figured, hell, if a Bigfoot's going to get me arrowheads, I want to put them on my hat.
So when that happens, Duke, do you have to trade him something back? Did you have to give him
I already
collateral?
gave him stuff. He's got a weakness for Reese's Pieces, and I sent him like a case of them down there about 6 months ago.
Love it.
And then he felt like he owed me something. So when I asked her, hey, grab me some arrowheads out of the woods when you find some more. Oh, hell,
yeah. Bigfoot and E.T., they just love Reese's Pieces.
Yeah. Well, they all got different things that they like. Like I discovered here in the last couple of years that there's certain things that you can get away with gifting, or not so much gifting. Well, I guess it's gifting. Trading with them that is okay, and then other things that aren't good to give them. And then third category of indecipherable, I don't know what the hell this thing is. I suspect it, and I'm not going to touch it. And a lot of the stuff you might try and leave them falls into that category. If they can't recognize it as something edible or anything, it's highly suspect, and they'll probably leave it there, come back every couple of days, poke it with a stick to see if it blows up or something, and then wander off again. They're just very, very suspicious of anything that they know you for a long time.
You can't set up a trail cam by these gifting sites, I'm guessing.
Well, you could try it, but then they'd never trust you again. And the chances are you wouldn't get anything anyway. They could zap trail cameras. I got an interesting sequence of videos that I'm going to release that some friends of mine down in Florida sent me a few years ago, where they have what they claim is a stationary portal. And they realized it was there a long time ago, so they set up a game cam on it. And every so often the game cam would just mysteriously die, or there'd be weird distorted pictures, and so they couldn't quite figure that one out. And then they decided that what they were going to do was to just hardwire the game cam, bury a cable in the ground 100, 150 feet, connect it to a car battery in a little box, so it couldn't mysteriously run out of batteries or something. Then they got this whole series of interesting photos of what looks like a foggy patch where they always claim the portal is, like something's about to open up. And the next thing you see a Bigfoot's head right there next to the camera. And then there's blur. And then you see his head there looking in the camera again. And what was going on is he kept trying to zap that camera and he couldn't make it go off. So he kept looking at it And then take another picture of them. I got like 22 pictures of that.
That's amazing.
Really?
Yep.
We interviewed a guy that had up in Minnesota, and he had basically the same thing. It was like, he said there was an energy collector under the ground, and there was a portal on top of this serpent mound, and he said all kinds of weird stuff was coming out. And lo and behold, there was a family of Bigfoot that was coming in and out of his barn. And since then we've heard some wild stories, Duke. But most of these Louisiana Bigfoot squatches are, the rumors are they're a little bit more aggressive and mean than maybe some of the northern ones. They seem friendly if they're leaving gifts behind.
Every area has the rumor that their Bigfoot are the most aggressive, and everybody else's Bigfoot are pansies. So no.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like a regional football team. It's like ours is the best.
No, actually, like I said, I got one. What I got on my hat here right now. That came from a Louisiana Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And they don't call themselves Bigfoot. They're called Sukaloo.
Duke, tell me how you get to that place. So, you obviously have to find an area where the Bigfoot are. And then how do you get yourself to a position where you're sort of trusted or able to have this gift transaction? Because, if Nate and I walk out in the Tennessee woods, and we actually had some people email us recently about close to where we live, there's supposedly some activity on this property. How do you cultivate that type of transaction or interaction, or even we might even call a relationship with a Bigfoot?
Well, with me, it wasn't something that I went into with a plan. I'm just curious about them. And once I figure out where they are, I just keep going back there. And that's basically what the whole thing comes down to. You habituate them to your presence. You just keep going back to the same damn place over and over and over. And most people don't want to go camping in the same place over and over again. Right. And especially if it's a spooky place where weird things happen and people scream and run away in the middle of the night, then a lot of people don't want to go camping there over and over again. So in both the groups out here that I've got habituated to my presence, and the one of them, I think they consider me to be on, on their side more or less. The other one has practically adopted me. But it took 7 or 8 years of going there constantly, like as much as I could get away and get up there. And, regardless of the weather, if I could get up there, it's raining, miserable, nobody wants to go out camping. I don't care, I'm going. Yeah. And that's another thing you get points for too. It's like, okay, the weather's completely shite. Normal humans aren't out in the woods. What are you doing here? I just wanted to visit you guys. Hey, how you doing?
Are you talking to them like that? Is that what you do?
Yeah, I do. They don't answer me because the ones up here either don't speak English or don't feel like they should answer me, so I don't get to hear any other than Bigfoot noises that they make. They whistle. That's kind of fun too.
Yeah,
you can tell it's not a normal animal. You whistle back at them, they whistle back to you again. And I always go, "Hey guys, how you doing?" And I wave at them.
Man, spend a lot of time alone out there.
Well, I usually have other humans with me. I used to camp solo a lot. And then after I got a channel, everybody started getting horrified by what I was getting on camera and said they don't want to see me out there camping by myself anymore. And I'm like, well, why? Nothing killed me yet. And they're like, well, bring somebody with you. Yeah. And the only use I could figure that would be is if I get hurt and I, can't walk out. Well, it's great to have somebody else there that can help you. You don't want to be stuck 20 miles out in the middle of a mountain range with a broken leg or something by yourself. That could be bad. For the purposes of actually proving to people that I'm not full of crap, I always have somebody with me now. So when I'm filming something or something happens or whatever, I got a witness right there backing me up. And sometimes they're hearing and seeing things that I'm missing. So that's even more fun.
Do you think they're reading your mind, they're reading your thoughts, they know kind of what your intentions are?
That's the other half of the equation, because you can figure out, if you can figure out where they are, that's a big hurdle. And then you can manage to be camping there a lot for years. And, some people, they might get used to you sooner, and other people, they might never get used to you. The other big part of it is what your intentions are like and what your personality is like. And they find most humans to be extremely erratic and untrustworthy, which we are. So unless, they keep seeing your intentions are good over and over and over to the point where it's so redundant, you're like, oh my God, aliens from friggin' Pluto would have been friends with me by now. And they're still like, hold on, we're still checking you out.
You got to bring a lot of bags of Reese's out there with you.
Yeah, it's not so much the food thing. Actually, that was kind of hilarious because they started gifting me. And I was going like, where the hell are these things coming from? Every time I come up here camping, I find weird things on the campsite that shouldn't be here. Like a brand new shiny silver thermos and a really expensive pair of Oakley sunglasses and motorcycle gloves. And nobody leaves this stuff laying on a campsite when there's nothing else on there. Where is it coming from? So I got a hold of Robin. I said, Robin, can you please mind speak with these guys out here and ask them what's going on? And she's like, oh yeah, they're saying that they think you guys dropped this stuff somewhere, and since they found it, they brought it back to the campsite in case it was yours and you can claim it. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll call everybody. So I called everybody on my team. Nobody lost a thermos. Nobody lost sunglasses. Nobody lost motorcycle gloves. So I said, yeah, just tell them it's not our stuff. And she said, one of them said, good, they want this shiny thing. They wanted to determine it's for some reason, shiny thing. And then I started thinking about it afterwards, and I went, not only were we not carrying this stuff around the woods, dropping any of it, where are they finding this stuff? Like, is some other campsite in the valley a place we might have potentially dropped something? So they have to bring it back over to us to make sure we didn't drop it? You know, like their whole thought process is kind of not like the same way ours is. They don't understand ownership and stuff like that. Distances don't seem to matter to them as much as they do to us. Oh, that campsite's right only a mile over there. That's your campsite too, right? No.
What do you think makes a Sasquatch kind of go rogue or mean, kind of just become...
They have a social system.
Killer.
And ones that get too far out of line get thrown out of the local group, whether it's just a family group or it's a more extended clan or a tribal unit. They've all kind of got the same rules, and there are some variations depending on who the alpha male of the clan is. And alpha male gets to call the shots. So if somebody gets too far out of line or they challenge the alpha male for supremacy and get their butts kicked, they're thrown out of the group. Now they're on their own. And even for something as big and powerful as a Sasquatch, that's the worst thing that can happen. Think about us as humans. What's the worst thing that can happen? Well, you could get killed. Or you could get thrown in jail. Well, they don't have jail. Their jail is you go away over there and don't let any of us see you again, or we'll whip your ass. You know, so now you're completely on your own. You don't have anybody to talk to or interact with. You have to find all your food by yourself. You have to make sure that no humans are seeing you all by yourself. That's a lot of effort. And the reason they got thrown out of the group in the first place is bad behavior. And occasionally you get these rogue individuals that team up with each other. They find other ones that have also been thrown out of their groups, and then you got these little gangbanger desperado units of Bigfoot running around, and they're the ones that cause most of the trouble. LBL, that's what's going on there.
Yeah.
Ones from different areas nearby got kicked out of their own troops, they all ganged up. And that's where they're at.
That's our neck of the woods.
When the rogues team up, it's like the mega powers, right? It's like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage get together, and you've got a tag team.
No,
you gotta look out for those guys.
The Kingpin and several other variations of himself all teamed up.
I love it.
I mean, Duke, so we've asked probably 150 guests over the years what are their thoughts on Bigfoot. Nobody has the same answers. So what are some sort of updated theories and thoughts you have on this creature now? I mean, the last 3 years. I mean, you do so much research. You're way down the Sasquatch rabbit hole, further than most. Are your theories evolving? Do you have new thoughts about this creature, or is it just like you're just strictly in the research camp? And I know research obviously leads to new ideas, but any updated thoughts on
maybe my theories weren't evolving, I wouldn't be making any forward progress, and I just retire. That doesn't mean that they're radically changing, though. I just keep getting more information. And for the first time in about, I've been in this 45 years, and I was probably in it over 30 before I started going in the right direction. Because you have to keep eliminating all these other red herrings that people throw out there. Oh, it's Gigantopithecus. No.
Yeah.
It takes a while for you to get the information to actually disprove that, no, it's not. It's not Gigantopithecus. I don't care what certain glorified podiatrists may tell you. That is empirically not the truth. And the reason is because a higher power known as DNA science has already sequenced Gigano's DNA, and they have proven that it is a variant, larger version of orangutans that exist today. It was just a bigger one. Well, look at an orangutan's foot. What's it look like?
Looks like a hand. Yeah.
Right? So in only 100,000 years, somehow they developed this other weird-looking foot that looks like one of ours. I managed to coax the person to ask this question to out of their virtual hiding in retirement that was going on for 10 years. And the person that sequenced the Sasquatch genome DNA study, Melba Ketchum. I had Dr. Ketchum on my show, 3-parter. And as soon as she has more updates on the ongoing research she's doing right now, she'll be back on my show to give updates again. All of the science that she's done, and also other science from other parts of the world where they're doing genome studies on some of these supposed cryptids and what, all seems to go in the same direction. And what she was able to gather from it so far is that we are definitely looking at a hybrid. They hybridized whatever the proto-being was, hybridized with humans 12 to 15,000 years ago. The majority of the human DNA involved is either from the Levant or from North America. So there's virtually no white people that are in the Sasquatch genome, if you want to put it that way. But there are North American natives, and there are the Levantines from the Middle East. which is interesting. And then there's some other weird anomalies in the male side of the DNA that she's still going through. So we can't really talk about that yet, but does not look like a natural being's DNA. It looks like somebody spliced strands of different things together for whatever the original being was. There could be still some of them running around. We don't know. All the Sasquatch DNA samples that they gathered that she was studying have all come up with this hybrid mix. And because they've been hybridized for so long, there's a lot of variation. It's not a 50-50 mix. Some of them will have more human blood. Some of them will have more proto-Sasquatch blood. So you could have ones that look really, really human because they're like 80% human. And other ones that look really, really, really not like a human because they're 80% whatever that other stuff is.
Yeah.
So that's where you get this massive variation in what they look like, and everybody tries to phenotype them and say, well, the ones around here are this type 3s, and the ones up there are the type 7s, and no, it's just like native tribes. They're in a local region. They're mostly inbreeding with each other. Most of the males aren't going to some other part of the country to get a mate, so they've got the local gene pool, which tends to make all the locals look very similar after a long time. And you can find all of this with the native tribes, too. We even got a tribe up here called the Flatheads. Guess why they call them that? Because their heads look flat. Because they all were in, the same genetic group was inbreeding with each other. Not inbreeding to the point of problems, but breeding with the same group of people for, centuries. And so they all started getting this characteristic look. And you can find that all over the world. So why would it be any different with the Sasquatch? If they're all just this, basically small regional group, tribe, troop, whatever, they're mostly going to be breeding with whoever is local. And after a long period of time, they'll all start looking really similar to each other. And what's surprising to me is how much variation there is within a local group, where you can have like the mom, the dad, and 2-3 offspring, and the kids all look different. They don't look like each other. And sometimes they don't look like mom or dad. It's this weird genetic mix keeps expressing itself differently with every generation, apparently.
It kind of reminds me of some of the giant conversations we've had on our show, because we really went into that rabbit hole for a long time. You had these sort of weird genetic anomalies with these ancient giants. You had you had the elongated skull ones. You had some ones that were very, that sounded like the demigods of Greek mythology. And then you had ones that are just like the one-eyed, ugly-looking Cyclops ones that are supposedly where, they say is related to the megalith building, and they were responsible for some of those things. So there seemed to be a wide variety of just those things, the giants, and they all had sort of these genetic anomalies too. Some had 6 fingers, 6 toes, and
that comes into play on this whole Bigfoot subject too, because there's a bunch of people out there that are going, Bigfoot or the Nephilim. Okay. Well, if Bigfoot or the Nephilim, the genetic markers for them is they have double rows of teeth and 6 digits. How many 6-toed Bigfoot tracks have you seen?
Yeah.
Not any yet.
I've seen one. And I'm not sure it was a Bigfoot track.
Could have been.
The giants can have either, 5 or 6 toes, but if they're Nephilim, if they're not some kind of a, watered down hybrid, they're probably going to have 6 digits. And that was reported for all the giant mound builder civilization along the Midwest and the whole thing. Not only gigantic size, but also the 6 digits and double rows of teeth. And this also seems to go back to the Anunnaki, which some people think are the same as the fallen angels that made the Nephilim. So Anunnaki came down, mated with humans, made monstrous hybrids. That's where the giants came from. But the Anunnaki were gigantic too. And according to the Bible, before, in antediluvian times, humans were more like 15, 20 feet tall, or maybe even up to 30 feet tall. Everything was big. And after the Great Flood, then everything got smaller in size, et cetera, et cetera. And the same thing with the giants. The giants went from being ridiculously, tremendously gigantic to only being gigantic. And a lot of the megafauna was gone and everything. It also lines up interestingly with Norse mythology, because the Aesir can be almost directly linked with the Anunnaki. And the Aesir was only one of the 2 groups of Anunnaki giants. There was also the Nemnir. And the Nemnir are what the Norse were calling frost giants. They're the ones that like the really cold climates and live up by the North Pole or in tall mountains and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure some of them are still around. The other guys mostly got completely wiped out. And the reason for that is because they were the ones that like to lord it over humans, pretend they're gods, have civilizations of humans fawning on them and doing everything for them. And they just be the big guy, like the mound builders here in North America. And then at some point, they got too predatory and started causing too many problems. And according to Navajo legend, they got, most of the tribes on the continent together and went to war with them, and drove them off the continent back through the Siberian land bridge, and then left part of the Navajo tribe there in Alaska as a rear guard to make sure they didn't come back again. And it's interesting to note that the tribe in Alaska call themselves the Dene, and the Navajo call themselves the Dene. And when they checked, guess what? They're the same tribe. They got the same bloodline.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to listen to what the Navajo have to say about this one.
That checks out, right? Yeah.
Getting back to the frost giants, the Nemnir, they didn't lord it over humans or want to have anything to do with us. They tried to stay as far away as possible. And because they didn't go to war with us and whatnot, it seems reasonable to assume that when there was this war on these other jerks that they kept eating us and whatnot, that they wanted to chase off the continent, they might have just ignored these guys or not even known they existed, because it seems like their MO is just a hide, basically. Stay the hell away from humans, out in the middle of nowhere. And occasionally you get somebody out in the middle of nowhere that sees one of these damn things. There's been probably at least a handful of reports from Montana in the last 15 years of people seeing actual full-on giants, not Bigfoot. Yeah. So some of these things are still around. And according to the information on them, they all spread out all over the world about 200,000 years ago. And during the glaciation periods, a Nemnir could just basically walk across. So they ended up on all the northern parts of the world and northern continents, and where they probably still are, some of them to this day. And again, because their genetics, they live for hundreds of years, probably 800-900 years.
Really? I didn't think about that. I mean, I know that we just went to Peru with some listeners of the show, and we you see this connection all over the world, where they had this knowledge to build these things, and they could put these rocks. Some of them were 90 tons perfectly together, like Lego pieces.
Yeah,
you see them building the same structures all over the world, and there is a link that. They started somewhere, and then they sort of spread like a virus, and they got pushed to remote parts of the world, islands, and like you're saying, maybe some northern areas and the snow where no one's
it doesn't sound like the frost giants really were the megalith builders, though. We don't have any indication that they were. I mean, it's possible, but we certainly don't have any legends or indications that they were the ones that were doing that. It sounds like it was pretty much the Aesir or Anunnaki that were doing that. And there's, two different kinds of construction methods, too. So there may have been two different civilizations involved, because you've got megalithic and polygonal constructions.
Yeah. Do you think Bigfoot originated as more of a chimera, like some sort of like ancient experiment, or do you think Bigfoot came from somewhere else?
Yeah, that's the hard one to answer. We don't have quite enough information on the male side of the genome right now to be able to conclusively say one way or the other whether it was something naturally occurring or whether it was some sort of a GMO chimera that was put together at some point in the past. But if you go back and you look at, all the old mythology, including Christianity, they talk about there being weird animals around that don't exist anymore. Yeah. And some of them made pictures of them. A lot of weird things that aren't around anymore. But they seem to think that they were around at some point. And this is like the natives here in North America, where they've got totem poles on the West Coast. And if you look at a totem pole, every single animal on there is an actual live, real animal that you can ID. And then they have Bigfoot's face on there.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So it's the same thing over there. They weren't making up stuff. This is like, here's this weird thing that lives over here. Here's what it looks like. Here's my weird, whimsical, artistic representation of it. And if you saw some of the artwork they did like back in the 1700s, where they'd get a verbal report from somebody and they didn't have a photograph or anything, and they'd work from the verbal report and they'd do a drawing of it, and then you compare that drawing to what it actually looks like, it looks like a fanciful monster, but it's a real critter.
Duke, I got a quick question about, you were talking about, the regionality and the difference in the way that Bigfoot looks or Sasquatch looks based upon region. Do you think that that's a product of what you talk about, tribalism, essentially? Or do you think that these hybridization of these animals was happening in regional spaces? So this was happening in North America, and the same sort of process was happening in Europe and in Australia and Southeast Asia. So you had sort of the same, generally speaking, sort of science experiment, if you will. Or do you think these all sort of came down, from, if you will, some kind of Adam and Eve situation with the Sasquatch creature, where you had this initial hybrid animal, and then from that parent came all of the variations that we see now, across the planet?
Well, clearly at some point there was something that was a pure blood, that was a male, and whether it was genetically crossed with the human or it did it with the good old-fashioned physical methodology, that's where these Sasquatch hybrids came from. So since we don't see any evidence of no collected DNA samples anyway from these pure bloods, whatever they are, we can assume that either they're extinct or they're so very rare and good at hiding that we haven't been able to get a sample from one of them. So it could be that what was happening was a genetic bottleneck, that there weren't very many of them left. And let's face it, that was like bad times in North America anyway.
Right.
And so they might have not had any choice and went, well, it's either mate with this human female or that's it. There's hardly any of us left. We don't know. We just have no way of knowing until more of the genome study could be worked out. But one would expect that if they had been running around the world mating with the local human women to produce these hybrids, that if you did a DNA study from, like, let's say the Yeren in China or the Yeti in Tibet, you should expect, if the same thing was going on over there, that you would find that the human component came from local bloodlines, in other words, Tibetans or Chinese.
Right. Yeah.
But nobody's done this yet, so we have no way of verifying that.
Okay. That's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you hear those wild stories where women will say they were camping or whatever, and then
that's not a wild story. I mean, think about it. They're hybrids with us. They have a tremendous sense of smell, pheromones.
Yeah.
Women are on their period or something, shouldn't be out in the woods anywhere near a Bigfoot. So the adults know better. It's the horny teenagers. Remember, the alpha male of the group has complete control over everybody in it and what they do. And this may be a situation where there's no available females that aren't related to the male, and they aren't going to be allowed to mate with any of them.
There was one recently where a woman was claiming that her husband was impotent or whatever, and there was no way she could get pregnant, and she didn't cheat on him. And Luke, we got probably 50 people said.
Oh, the one in Kentucky, right? Yeah, where she claimed she was having Bigfoot's baby. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like, the National Enquirer, but as we've learned over the years, maybe the National Enquirer has more truth in it than anything else. So
that's like Mitch when he was making his joke saying everybody's got to get off the back of the Bigfoot researchers about them taking blurry pictures and the cameras are all broken. There's nothing wrong with the cameraman or the camera. It's just that Bigfoot is blurry, and that's extremely disturbing. There's a huge creature that's blurry running around the woods that we know nothing about.
I love it. Hey,
that's why we have blurry creatures. That's why we're here.
Duke, what about the UFO connection to Sasquatch? What do you think about that?
They don't like it. It's the same connection that the UFOs have with us. They show up, interfere with us, abduct people, probe them, sometimes don't bring them back. Yeah. And in the Sasquatch's case, it's even worse because they think that they should be spies for them. And they should spy on us and report back to the little alien bastards. And the Sasquatch are not down with that. And when they get a chance, they stomp them like little pancakes. They don't like them.
You think that they're picking them up, dropping them off, same as us?
Yes.
Taking them places?
Absolutely. Sometimes they take them away and they don't bring them back again. So when the Space Boys show up, the local Sasquatch run and hide is generally what happens. If they find a base where these little guys are, they might just decide to pay them a visit at some point, which isn't very good for them when it happens. Because remember, they can go through portals. It doesn't matter where your base is. If they find out it's there, they can show up.
Yeah, so Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, I mean, we know that people have, according to, there's more popular pop culture sort of references to Bigfoot.
Well, you get reports of this from the military, too. There was one guy, and his job was just to monitor the video cams. And there was one of them that was connected to the wall of a building, was inside 2 perimeters and a huge barbed wire fence. And he's sitting there looking at it, and all of a sudden a Bigfoot materialized, looking up at him in the camera. gave him a dirty look, and then dematerialized again. Scared the shit out of him. Just like, I can get in here anytime I want, buddy.
Yeah, I was gonna say we interviewed a guy that was in the 70s, was on the base, and they got through all the security. He was on the runway, at night, terrorizing the guy at night. The night duty guy running around in his Jeep, and it's like Sasquatches out there, on the runway. And
he took a wrong turn somewhere.
The crazy thing about that is the same story, Duke. Right? This whole base goes like code red, and everybody straps up, and they corner. They think they corner the Bigfoot in a ravine, and then it's gone. They get it. They clear the ravine, and he's not there. Which is,
I heard an even better one where a military base, they had captured one. They had knocked him out somehow and captured him. They had him in this room, nice and solid, so he couldn't get out again. They had cameras on him and stuff. And the guy that was watching the room through the cameras went to take a look at it. There's nothing in the room. What the hell?
Yeah.
How did he get out of there? So he goes running down, opens the door, looks in the room. There's nothing in the room. Walks in, looks around. There's nothing there. Here's something swish, swish behind him. Doesn't see anything. Goes back out in the hallway again. Yeah, it was still in the room. It was cloaking. Wow. As soon as he opened that door, it just walked right out behind him. And then they had that Sasquatch trapped inside the building for 2 weeks. They couldn't capture him. They couldn't figure out how to get him back in his room. Shit would keep getting wrecked and disappearing and stuff. Finally, they said the only thing we could figure out to do was just to open the exterior doors and leave them open for a few hours in the hopes that he'd figure it out. He'd smell the fresh air and he'd go out on his own, because we didn't want to deal with it anymore. We couldn't catch him, and he was destroying things inside the building. So they finally just opened the doors and let him out, basically.
Like straight out of Predator or something, right? Like you have this like Dylan.
Well, they didn't think they could do anything like that until it's like, well, he was just in this locked room. Where did he go? No, he didn't open a portal. He just cloaked, so you couldn't see him.
How do you think they do that, Duke? How do you think that they're able to do that?
I have no idea. That's one of their little tricks that eludes me. I know some of it has to do with their hair and what they can do with that. And, it seems to be the same thing with cloaking. It has to do with going through a portal or something. They just raise their vibration level. Yeah. They get it high enough, it starts bending light around them. You can't see them. Yeah. And if they get it even higher, then they can just penetrate right through the dimensional membrane, and they can go into the other realm. And that's what a lot of the natives say too. They walk in two worlds. They can just pierce the veil. According to other information I've got, that isn't true of all of them. Apparently it takes some learning or general body size or something, and like the little ones can't do that. The adults can, and they probably have to be trained in order to do it. Yeah. So it's not necessarily every Sasquatch you're going to run into is going to be able to open a portal and run away.
Mm. Yeah, it makes sense. And the way you describe these things, it's almost as if they're, I wouldn't say you feel sorry for them, but they seem to be wanting to be left alone and do their own thing. You got UFOs kind of hassling them. You got the government's probably out there hunting these things down, trying to kill them.
Yeah,
off.
Then you got Bobo and Matt Moneymaker and all those guys out there,
fighting with other cryptids. Government making GMO things they're letting loose that they have to deal with. Yeah.
But what's your personal feelings towards the Sasquatch? Is it like is it a good? Mostly
I love
good.
Them.
Okay.
Yeah, they're nice. They're super nice. They're my buddies. They're just like people are. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are crazy. But in the case of the Sasquatch, the ones that I've had to interact with anyway, they all seem to fall into the pretty much good category. And yeah, they just want to be left alone. They don't want us bugging them. They don't want us interfering with them. I think a lot of the reason that they bother to try and do any kind of communication with people or reach out to them is just because they want for us to carry a basic, simple message to the rest of the humans out there. And that's not, ew, humans, which they'd probably like us to give that message out to. Mm-hmm. Their main message is, hey, we're people and not monsters. Message number 2, quit shooting at us.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I say that because every other creature we talk about on our show, you don't want to run into one. But Sasquatch is really the only thing that we talk about that's sort of outside of, in the paranormal space. It seems to be people have good experiences, and there's a lot of Christians who say, "Oh, they're demonic. They're all demonic," and I'm like, I don't really think the evidence is that they're
not.
all. Yeah.
Now, I can
Some of them
unequivocally-
sound like
I
it.
can unequivocally say they are not demonic because as my last show on Sunday, I did a replay of when I had Dave the Deliverer on talking about that. And Dave was a professional in the deliverance ministries for about 30 years. He threw about 3,000 demons into God's dumpster fire during that time period. And he ran into some Bigfoot when he was out night fishing. They didn't want him in his pond. And he didn't know they were Bigfoot. He just heard horrible noises coming from the woods, so he tried to exorcise them. And it didn't work. And then they got mad and started shaking a tree next to the pond, which was a mesquite tree. It's not very easy to shake a mesquite tree. And at that point, he went, "Oh, those aren't demons. Those are Bigfoot. I need to get out of their pond."
Yeah.
Going, "I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting out of here." If they were demonic, 100%, he would have dunked them into God's flaming dumpster fire. And, same thing with the Nephilim thing. They're not Nephilim.
Yeah.
And anybody that can actually talk to them, whether mind speaking or verbally, and a lot of people have asked them that question. And it's not, the answer isn't just no, it's hell no. They get really pissed. That's like an insult. Because they consider themselves to be on the side of Tahoe, the creator, God. They're not on the side of the bad guys, and that's what they think, Actually, there's a story that goes back thousands of years in Sanskrit and Ramayana, and they talk about when Lord Rama's girlfriend was kidnapped by giants and taken to the island of Sri Lanka, which was named after their number one demon god, Ravana, whose name was Lanka. So that's where Sri Lanka came from. But at the time, he didn't have a big enough navy or anything to try and bring a gazillion troops there to fight an army of giants to get his girlfriend back again. So his allies said, "Hey, we'll build you a bridge so you can march your armies across. You don't need a big navy then." And he's like, "Okay, I'm totally down with that." So they built what was called Adam's Bridge, which is, according to the legends, about 10 miles long and half mile wide. And it bridged from the mainland out to Sri Lanka. Now, interestingly, satellite imaging found Adam's Bridge exactly where they said it was going to be and just how big they said it was going to be about 3.5, 4 years ago. And they put an archaeological dive team on it to see if it was natural or man-made. And after a couple of years, they came back and said, "This thing is man-made, and it's at least 6,000 years old." Okay, that one's solved. So, according to the legend now, Rama's allies had built this bridge for him, not only built the bridge for him, they wanted to be part of his army and go massacre the living crap out of the giants and help him get his girlfriend back again. So who were these weird people? Well, according to the descriptions, they're named Vanara, which in Sanskrit means forest people.
Oh.
They didn't wear clothes. They were covered with hair, and some of them were the size of elephants. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
And they were all down with the idea of invading that island and killing the crap out of the giants. So you can see, they're not on the same side.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be like the Battle of Armageddon, dude. Luke, you're going to have Bigfoot next to you just taking them down the aliens.
Dude, it just sounds like I'm Han. Yeah.
Yeah, I hug the Wookiees. I want them on my side. Yeah, go Wookiees.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if we have, it's like the paranormal golden retrievers out there ready to help us, huh?
Yeah. Well, their job is basically to stay the hell out of the way. There was, according to one source, at some point there was an alien race that either had something to do with their creation or just somehow managed to get control of them that wanted them to actually spy on us for them. But that race is left. And now in their place comes the little gray bastards going, they're gone. Now you're working for us. And Bigfoot's like, "No, I'm not." Steps on them.
I mean, you get to a certain place when you're so steeped in this, and in a podcast like this, and you like today we had just a wild episode this morning, and talking about all kinds of things. We did a deep dive into the merfolk and the underwater kingdoms and all that stuff. So you start to realize that there is no black and white answer to most of this stuff. It's all nuanced.
It's real life. It's all shades of gray. In order to get a specific answer, you have to ask a specific question.
Yeah. Duke, I've got a specific question, and this probably should have been a question from the top with you, but you've been in the space for 40 years as a researcher. What does that look like on a day-to-day and maybe even seasonally? I know that there's an actual a season for you where you're actually out in the
we're
field.
just about done with it.
Yeah, but what
high mountains, you don't get more than about, if you're lucky, half a year that you can do anything.
So what does it look like? So are you out? Explain as a researcher.
During the summer months, I'm out as much as I can afford to be out there. If I got the money and a working vehicle, I'll live out there. I mean, really, I only have to come back to town to like file reports and put up videos. The rest of the time I could be out there doing research. So the only limitation on me is, if I got a working vehicle and how much money I've got to keep paying for gas to get out there and back. Other than that, I'll be out there as much as I can. And some years I'm out there like constantly. One year I spent 176 nights in the field. And this year and last year wasn't that great. I was having mechanical problems. So I was having a hell of a time even getting out there. But I was still out there, like 2-3 times a month all summer long.
And are you shooting video? You're going to the same spot?
Oh, yeah. Wherever we go, we're shooting video. We spent a lot of time in the Garnett Range up by the ghost town of Coloma this summer, which is different than our usual A location, because this one, it's like you don't hardly ever see them. They really keep a low profile. They don't mix structures, at least no big ones or anything. You get snaps and leaners and stuff, but nothing like the colossal constructs that other troop is making. But what we did get was a ton of tracks. We got way more tracks than we usually get. And there's one individual up there that's really big, because we found 3 different 21-inch tracks from him this summer. Oh. And then there's a smaller, huge one that left 2 track lines of 19-inch tracks going up and down this steep ridge, which, thanks for doing that, dude, because he managed to do that the same day I was there with Kelly Shaw from Rocky Mountain Sasquatch. So when Kelly found that, he was pretty happy, big grin on his face. These are the biggest tracks I've ever found. I found 19 inches before, but not a whole track line of them. Oh my God. He's like, and these are like craters in the ground going up this ridge. They weren't just like flat on the ground, they were craters. So whatever made them was huge and very heavy,
And what do you think Sasquatch thinks about you filming them? I mean, obviously they
don't want us to film them. They don't care if you get audio of them. They don't care if you film their tracks, if you film their structures. Just don't film them. Yeah. But if you catch them, fair and square on camera, then I guess you get to keep the video or something. I'm not sure exactly how that happens, because I have accidentally caught them on camera a few times, and they didn't erase the video. And boy, they've sure done that with some other people that I've had in my research area, where they just screwed to their cameras. They erased every damn thing that was on it, or they turned it all into snowball fights and cross lines going across it. Or, I had one time I was in an area that apparently they didn't want me to be in there, because I was filming. I walked in there by myself, and I had the camera on most of the whole time I was in there. I had to keep stopping it and turning it on again, because it wouldn't run long enough. So I had 3 clips. And when I came back down to where my buddy was parked, who had to answer call of nature, which is why he wasn't walking with me, and I looked at my camera, there wasn't any video there. Not only was there no video there was no files there.
Wow.
It skipped right from 44 to 47 or 48. There's like 3 of them missing. Kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee.